I'd like to call the December 12th meeting to order of the Board of Education. Thank you all for being here. We have a full house. It's so exciting. We will start with recognitions.
Yes.
So I hear we have a couple wonderful recognitions.
We do. We had an opportunity on an annual basis. There is a luncheon that Farmington Valley superintendents put together on behalf of CAPS, which is our superintendent organization. And it's to recognize two students for both their service, their academic excellence, and just overall positive impact to our school environment. And we had a really fun luncheon. I've done this for a lot of years. This was a lot of fun. I got an opportunity to meet two great families and spend some time with the kids and learn, Ben, about your football championship, learn, Brennan, how you balance your incredible schedule at the high school, and really just had some nice conversation while we ate a really good meal at the Farmington Country Club. And then Rebecca Lobo was our guest speaker, the famous Rebecca Lobo of the Yukon Huskies, who really gave an inspirational talk to the kids about chasing your dreams, and it was really a great afternoon. So we are here to recognize these two students for their excellence, and I am going to have Brian White start and introduce to us Ben Warner.
So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Ben Warner. We're very proud this year at Henry James to have Ben as the recipient of this award. We have a process at Henry James where the teachers represent students in honor. And so Ben rose to the top this year, and as Mr. Curtis pointed out, he's a really well-rounded student. In addition to really being an excellent student academically, he's involved with lacrosse, with football, with downhill skiing racing, with kayaking. He also does a lot of really great service work. We think about our HJ way at Henry James and the importance of character, and his teachers really recognize Ben as a true role model. They describe him as collaborative, as somebody who's always there to help out a hand with other students, and really just sets a great example in the classroom. So we're very pleased to have Ben receive this award this year. So Ben Warner, congratulations. His brother Jack here in the audience this evening. Ben, congratulations.
We're the drivers.
Right.
Wonderful.
At this time, I'd like to have Andy O'Brien come up, principal of Simsbury High School, and introduce Brennan, our award nominee.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Really, just a lot of fun to be able to speak to you and tell you a little bit more about Brennan. Brennan has given so much to our school over the past 4 years. He's our senior class president. He's a member of our debate team and crew team. Recently at the Pumpkinhead, or the head of, I think it's called the Pumpkinhead Regatta. Yeah. If you went there, you would have seen that the different athletes will dress in different themes. I think you guys had a Seven Dwarfs theme.
We were, yes.
And as the coxswain, Brennan was the evil witch, and he had the apple to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies, and also to spurn on the people inside the boat. He's served as a member of our leadership team for the past 2 years. Last year, investigating student stress. This year, looking into the prospect of the benefits and questions associated with a potential late opening. So he's been an excellent advocate there. He participates in a number of our different choral programs. And this year also, he's really involved in something that's pretty cool to give back to our school. He is working with Mr. Martocchio and Mr. Weinbeck to make one of Mr. Batchelor's dreams come true. So Mr. Batchelor, when he was a class advisor, always had this dream, he and Mr. Betty, of having a bronze bust of a Trojan at the school for students and athletes to kind of smack and get some inspiration from as they went by this thing. And if you were in Mr. Batchelor's class, he had stuff like that. He had, things that were like shield-like and all these things that inspired you to service and to history. So Brennan has been able to secure funds from his class, from the class of 1977, from the SPTC, to secure a bronze statue on a granite base that will go right outside the main entrance of the high school. Wow. They're only about $2,000 short right now of reaching that goal, and we're finding ways to just bring those last bit of funds together. And I think it's a great tribute to Mr. Batchelor, and just another example of all the things that Brennan does to make our school a better place. So Brennan, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much.
Brennan, who did you bring with you?
I brought my wonderful mother, and my little sister. She's also wonderful.
Anything else you want to share?
What do I else want? No, I mean,
Thank you very much.
I think I'm good.
Thank you so much. Any others?
No?
Thank you all. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank you.
we look forward to watching your futures. Brennan, you know what you're doing next year?
Well, I hope to go to college, but hopefully in the DC area to study political science. I hear back from Georgetown this Friday, actually, so fingers crossed. But yeah, I'm hopeful. I want to stay political science, though, definitely.
Wonderful. Well, whatever school you'll be very successful at, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Moving on, we will go into public audience. Does anyone have anything to share? Excellent. Moving on, we're going to go to board and administrative communications. Dylan.
So I have some events that have been going on for the past couple of weeks. Well, first, tomorrow is scheduled to be an early release for students, so they're very excited. 2 weeks ago, the elementary schools hosted their parent-teacher conferences to talk with parents about the first third of the year and how the students have been doing academically. Schools around the district also held very successful PJ Days to raise money for Connecticut Children's Medical Center on last Friday, and I think it was a couple $100s from every school, and one school raised $800. So there was a lot of money. There's a lot of money raised, which is great.
Over 4,000.
Oh wow, awesome. Next week, the schools will be participating in an hour of code, and this hour is to teach students about the very fast-growing career of computer programming and coding. Terriffill also hosted a movie night last week where students got together and they watched the movie Storks. I heard it's a lot of fun from a couple third graders. Latimer Lane invited parents over from around the district to the Math and Focus Parent Night, where they taught the community about the new program and for parents to meet the new math coaches. The middle school is hosting the school's first ever door decorating contest, and so in this contest, each Connections and homeroom will be competing by decorating their door in the theme of Winter Wonderland. And I had the chance to talk to an 8th grader yesterday, and he had a couple ideas that he was telling me about. The middle school and the high school are both hosting their music concerts. Last week was the band and orchestra, and the choral concerts are going to be taking place later this week. The high school is also running its 5th annual Stuff a Cruiser event, which in this charity they donate toys to the Hartford Salvation Army, and then the toys are distributed to surrounding communities. And finally, next Friday, the high school will be having their ugly sweater competition, where teachers and students wear their worst but best sweaters, and hopefully will win some prizes.
Do you have one picked out?
I do not yet. I'll go shopping this weekend.
All right, good to know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Tom?
That really is a wonderful list of activities that enriches the lives of our students and our faculty too. So I just want to do a quick shout out to the orchestra program in the district, because I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the orchestra concert on Thursday, and it was just amazing to see those kids from the youngest to the oldest progress, and it's just a wonderful. I happen to be a string player myself, and I was inspired by what I saw there. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
Jennifer?
I wanted to just say I went to a CABE new board member training last week, which was amazing. I got to meet lots of board members from around the state. Really interesting things happening in both Enfield and Bloomfield that were really interesting that we can bring back and talk to. And it's a great day spent
Great.
learning.
Thank you.
Just quick, Squadron had their choral concert last night, and it all went well, so just a big congratulations to them as well.
Lydia?
Yeah, I just want to just report on, I attended the Cape Caps conference in November, so long ago, And it was a very, very good a conference, and we had, again, excellent speakers. We had David Pogue who spoke, and also one of our highlight speakers was Danielle Padilla Peralta who spoke. And it was attended by about 400 board members and CAPS members and other leaders of education within Connecticut. And the workshops were just spectacular this year. They just really ranged on a number of things. And some of the highlights that we did talk about this year in some of the workshops were obviously the Connecticut's economy, the special session, mandate relief and no mandate relief, and the task forces and councils that are already online, and several that will be coming forward. So this is moving into the legislative session that is going to be the next foray that we're going to be entering into. We did pass many resolutions from various boards and districts around the state, and today we had a State Relations Committee meeting where we are now starting to formulate and propose the legislative priorities for 2017. So if you're interested with any of your input that would help, you can go on the K website and look under the legislative priorities that are there, because in the next few weeks we're going to start drafting some of these that we're going to be presenting once we get to the Capitol come end of January, actually early February, since it's a short year. And also from the conference, Simsbury once again won several awards. First of all, we won an honorable mention, Simsbury Public Schools, under special projects for See the Need, and I'm sure someone can talk about that. I did see it on the board that was there. I wasn't quite sure what it was, so I'm explaining a little bit of naivety. And
See the Need?
We'll be
bringing that one back out because it's about supporting the Henry James Capital Project.
Oh, okay. Well,
yes.
Okay. Well,
What's our other awards?
Well, we won that. Very good. We also won under the computer-generated project. Simsbury Public Schools won it for the Simsbury Arts Academy logo. So congratulations on that. And also we won the K Board of Distinction Award for the, I forgot how many years. We're almost 8, 9, 10 years on that. So we have a little plaque to put onto one of the plaques up there, one of the little 2017 logo on here. So again, congratulations, Simsbury Board of Education, Simsbury School District, for all the hard work that you assist us in doing to make this school system what it is. So, and I will pass this on to Mr. Curtis so he can take hold of that. And that's the report.
Thank you very much. Todd.
All set tonight, thanks.
Susan?
I was just going to say, and Andy and Erin can back me up, we had a leadership team meeting discussing the possibility of, or exploring the possibility of, or later start times for the high school. Matt sent something out. I've heard from a couple of people about the survey that they've gotten it and fielded a few questions about it, but at least people are aware and have seen it in their email. So I encourage you all, it will be a very quick, just sit down, do it. We would appreciate the feedback. It would be wonderful if you all would contribute.
We have over 800 people, families that have responded so far.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. Really good.
Almost as good as the calendar survey.
Mrs. Humbrack.
Nothing at this point.
Mr. Sullivan.
This board certainly knows that we spend a lot of attention on school safety, and last week we had the chance to work with an outside expert for the first time in a number of years. The last one was when Ms. Lemke was in this seat, that we brought in an outside security expert. This was a gentleman by the name of Don Chomet, who's a retired school resource officer in the Virginia area, and his police retirement has done a lot of training of school resource officers and school assessments. So he came for 2 days, worked dawn to dusk looking at two of our schools. We chose one secondary school, the high school. We chose one elementary school, Squadron Line, and hope to be able to replicate whatever recommendations he comes out to some of our other schools. But just a great resource, very complimentary of many of the things we're doing, and is going to be producing a full report that we'll get hopefully before the holidays if he meets his goal, and then sharing out with the buildings. We won't share too much of that publicly because it's recommendations around our security, but I'm really excited to have him partnering with us.
Absolutely, thank you.
I'm just going to support a few things that have been said already tonight. Early release tomorrow is a building-based day where principals have designed professional development for teachers, so look forward to that. The math night was also well attended. Over 75 to 85 parents came, and the report, the feedback sheets that we got were really very positive and very good to hear from the parents. The school start surveys, the only other thing that I would like to say is it closes on Friday afternoon. So we do want parents and family members to get, that in by Friday afternoon. And the last item that Dylan spoke about, the hour of code, it is happening. It is this week, but it's happening over the month. And the one statement that was said by computerscienceedweek.org said, computer science opens more doors for students than any other discipline in today's world. So this has evolved over the last 3 to 5 years, and it's really engaging kids all the way down to kindergarten, all the way through 12th grade. So thank you to Melissa Farrington and our math department for really spearheading this, and for all the high school kids that go down to our elementary schools to help the students at the elementary level. So
wonderful. Mr. Leclerc.
Got a one-page handout in your folders. Just wanted to do another update for the board on energy efficiency and savings efforts. The first item that I wanted to highlight was that our electricity supplier for the district, we had a bid process recently, so our new rate beginning in December will decrease by nearly 2 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's a 2-year contract. We just came off of a 3-year contract, so we'll have some reasonable savings in the remainder of this fiscal year, about $40,000, and then for next year in excess of $80,000 due to that. So that's positive news. The other item that I gave you a few bullet points about is we've been exploring a fuel cell proposal at Simsbury High School. Steve Twitchell and I, Supervisor Buildings and Grounds, had met several times with Doosan Energy Solutions. They're out of South Windsor, and they have proposed to locate a fuel cell at Simsbury High School that would generate electricity for the building. They've done this at several other high schools throughout the state. But there's a lot of details that we're still trying to understand about it. There is a funding source through Eversource Low Emission Renewable Energy Credit Program, or LREC. And so basically we're now really trying to verify and vet the cost savings involved with this. It's in two different ways. One is it's guaranteeing you 1.5 cents less than whatever your advertised bid rate would be, but also there is the potential to use the excess heat generated by it to actually heat the building and heat your domestic hot water. But we would still be vetting that out, also some legal review of that process, and then bringing that to you next year next month, likely at one of your upcoming meetings. So I want to give you a little bit of background on that. The high school has been the topic of a lot of interest for programs that would be generating energy. We've been in conversation, Tom Roy, the Public Works Director for the town, Steve Twitchell, and myself have been in conversations with members of the Clean Energy Task Force about a potential microgrid. It would be a redundant source of energy for the high school and several businesses. And I believe Mark is actually here this evening, Mark Scully, who's really been the lead on that project. So we're looking into that also, and be looking forward to giving you more information about next steps.
Thank you very, very much. That's great.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
How does that work with, we just put all the solar panels and had that on the high school. So does this fuel cell work in concert with that? Replaces that?
The amount of energy generated by the panels is a real fraction of about 2.3 million kilowatt hours that building uses.
Okay.
So it was a known entity, and it still is, generating power for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Curtis. Wish everyone a happy Hanukkah. Tonight's the first night. And move on to recommended actions. Oh, I did also want to say that tomorrow night at the Simsbury High School, there is a choir concert that is going to be pretty spectacular for anyone at 7 o'clock.
I'll be there.
You'll be singing? We need to go see our award-winning singer. Thanks, John.
Take care. Good seeing you. Thank you.
So that's something that's available to the public. We are on to approval of minutes of November 14th, 2017 meeting. Anyone have any questions?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Excellent. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the minutes of our December 5th workshop. Anyone have any questions?
Move to approve.
Thank you very much. Tom, any seconds?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
I'll abstain.
Abstains?
I abstain as well.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Moving on to a gift to the Simsbury Public Schools from Latimer Maine.
Yes, this evening we have a gift that we appreciate the board's approval on from the Latimer Lane PTO of 25 Chromebooks and 4 iPads for students at Latimer Lane, the value of $9,594. So this has been a continued area of support for the PTO, and we'd ask that you give it your okay.
Thank you very much. We're so happy to have our PTOs and their hard work and their generous contributions. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, just a question. What is the status of Chromebook not utilization, but Chromebook availability at this school? Does this bring us to a new level of availability, or does it complete availability, or?
I don't think we have a formal ratio that I can compare school to school. I know we have ready access. I know that there's availability for each classroom.
In grades 3 through 6, it's like a 2-to-1 access, and we have iPads more at the K2 level. We do have some Chromebooks that are going to expire their shelf life soon, so it'll keep us pretty level. So.
Okay, so this is replacement primarily then?
Yes and no.
Okay.
We don't know what the shelf life will be when they get there, how much longer we'll be able to use them, so this is a great addition to what we have.
Very helpful.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. Now we move on to election of Board of Education officers. I request to open the nominations for Chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
And I would like to move that Tara Willerup, our current chair, be nominated for Chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Are there any further nominations?
I'd like to move that nominations be closed.
Thank you very much. We don't have to second that, do we? All right. Then we need a second motion.
Do we need a vote on that?
No, we have
motion?
to vote on you.
Further nominations?
We
Vote on the nomination.
Right.
Can we all vote on the nominations?
Yes.
Aye.
I need a motion and a.
Move to.
You'll second?
I will second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
What did we just do?
I have no idea.
I don't think we didn't do all that.
You move to.
Close
Nominations.
Nomination and then move to elect.
Right, so we need that.
I'm going to move the next one. You can
So-
move on to that next one.
I will move that Tara Willerup, our current chair, be elected
Even with
as
her
chairman.
competency level? I really don't want to rethink this.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
There we go.
There we go.
How about that? Well done.
I will take a nomination for the vice chair.
Okay, I'll move that Mike Goman be nominated for Vice Chair of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Are there any further nominations? motion, we close nominations?
Move to close.
Thank you very much.
I'm getting the hang of it.
Need a second on the nomination.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much.
Then we need a vote.
Now you need to.
Then we'll vote to close the
vote.
nominations, right?
I'll make a motion to close the nominations.
We don't need a motion, we just need to move to close the nominations.
Need a vote on the nomination.
Now we have to need to vote on the we're getting there. You guys, we have this under
Katie,
control.
can you just
We don't need
stand up
everybody
and
now.
point?
We're working through this. Say what you have to say.
Now I'm going to move that Mike be elected, Mike Bowman be elected as the vice chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Wonderful. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we didn't have a second?
I'll second that one.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Can I take back my nomination?
I offered you all. All right, do we have a nomination for secretary?
Mike, can you just take over?
Yes, I would like to move that Todd Burke be nominated for secretary of the Simsbury Board of Education.
I'll second that.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
And now we need a vote.
Now we're going to vote
On the nomination.
Vote on the nomination.
Do all those in favor of that nomination? But
Aye.
no, we don't do that yet. Don't we have to close the nomination?
Ask if anyone else.
Does
has
anyone need further nominations?
No.
Okay.
You don't have to vote to close them, and just.
But we need a vote on the nomination now.
Okay, I'm closing the nominations for Secretary of the Simsbury Board of Education. And now,
We vote.
I would
No,
move
Susan?
that we elect Todd as Secretary of the Board of Education.
and I would like someone to second that, please.
Second that.
Thank you very much.
Let's go nice
All
and
those in
slow.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You say aye again.
It was
Well,
this
what
vote,
did you
it's
do
this,
more aye?
it's this
right?
vote on my
Until
paperwork
2
that
years,
confuses
that's
me. I know, but the vote after the second, we're gonna talk about that later. Anyway, congratulations, all those city officers, and I'm really sorry for my incompetence. Moving
Feeling
on,
good about all that.
Still a lot of confidence.
it's Christmas time, all right. Now, I would really like to have Mrs. Lemke come up and talk about the special education program review.
Be happy to, and invite Ms. Forsberg to join me.
Great.
Is there anything in my phone?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
As is customary, it's important for me and certainly for Nancy to come and share the work of special services with the board once a year. We're doing this a little bit differently this year. Usually I also fold budget into this report, but I will be back with Mr. Curtis in January to hear specific with budget. Tonight is really just a program review of what is happening in special services in Simsbury. So tonight's presentation, I always begin with the mission statement, and we're going to end with the mission statement as well. In between, I'm going to give an update on our Big 5 focus that we've been talking about over the past 2 and a little smidgen more of the years that I've been in this role. I also have some additional information to share with you relative to our state reporting and some new budget developments from the state budget and implications for us here in Simsbury. And then we will round out things in the best way possible, hearing from one of our students, Derek Regenauer, who will be turning 21 in the spring, and he'll be sharing his experiences in Simsbury, specifically through special services since age 3. So a really wonderful way for us to end tonight's presentation. But I just want to kind of ground us in special education in Simsbury, always with the student in the center. And through our mission statement, and most importantly through our practice, believe that in order for students to be as successful as possible and to achieve high levels of independence, we want to make sure that families are coming together along with the support of the community members and what we do as far as our teachers here in Simsbury too, in order to make that difference. So the first of the Big 5 that you've been hearing from me has been about the achievement gap. And in previous presentations, whether they be the high school, middle school, or elementary, we've shared with you some data relative to the achievement gap. And in those data points and in those slides, typically it's included students in what we call our high needs category, which is a compilation of students who are English language learners, students who receive free or reduced lunch, or students who receive special services. Tonight we're going to take out all of the students except our students that are identified as special needs. So this is purely data relative to our students who receive special education services here in Simsbury. So we'll take a look and see what the data looks like. This first slide, just to reorient the board, are measures for student achievement and student performance across the state are either SBAC in grades 3 through 8, and for the first year this year, there's an accountability measure, the SAT. Previously, it was SBAC as well for our grade 11 students. What this slide shows is by DIRG, our demographic reference group, how Simsbury students who receive special services fare among other DIRG members who also receive special services. And the marker is students who achieve goal or above on either the SBAC or SAT. So when you look at this slide, board members might think, well, why isn't there the full compilation of all the districts under SAT or under the DIRG for math? It's because districts report out an N size of 40 or greater. So for the other districts, for the SAT, they didn't hit that N of 40. That's why you may not see them. But when you look at it, we're doing very well in our DIRG relative to English language arts. And certainly we have some work to do in math. It's a story that you've also heard on the general education side. But we are right leading the way in math in grade 11 through the SAT. So I'm going to go into those results a little bit further and show you some graphs. This graph really compares how our students do relative to these measures. If they are a general education student, that's what you'll see in that orangey yellow. And those are, again, are the percent of students who hit that at or above goal marker on SBAC or SAT. The reddish bar there shows our special education student performance in Simsbury. So Tom, you're often asking about the achievement gap in Simsbury. It's the difference between that orange bar and the red bar in Simsbury. What I've also provided for the board is also our general education state markers. That is denoted in the blue square. So those are our general education student, the kind of the state average. And what doesn't show up as well here on the big screen, there are green X's among those bars. And those green X's represent our special education student performance, that average across the state. Okay? So certainly you can see our achievement gap. What I would like to note in this slide, particularly through English language arts, is in grade 11, take a look at our special education performance of our students relative to the general education state performance. So that's certainly a celebration that also is reflected on that slide that I showed you before. But it's a nice measure and a nice visual of the achievement gap in looking at these different kind of measures here. And here's a different look at math. Okay, so certainly not as strong as our ELA performance. We know that. I'm going to talk in a bit about what we're doing about it, which is important. But again, you can see the achievement gap, general ed versus special ed in Simsbury, and comparisons for general education state and our special education state performance. These next two slides are really longitudinal data, again, taking out the special education students, and we put grades together 3 through 6, which is very similar how you've seen this data before, and grades 7 through 8. So over the past 3 years, we've been making steady gains. We made a nice gain last year in the middle school relative to special ed performance from that 19.8% to almost 37%. And we dropped again this past year. So wanted to show that to you. And again, I'll mention what we're going to do to respond to this data. And this is what it looks like in math. So in that grade 3 through 6, making, again, steady improvements and steady performance. But we saw that drop last year at the middle school.
I'm sorry, Ms. Lemke, what do the numbers at the bottom mean?
The numbers at the
Tom,
bottom, those are
Tom.
Years.
Tom, look up there.
They're
better on the
scale
big
is different.
screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
They don't come
Does it
through
come up
on
differently on the Chromebook?
Yeah.
Does that help? Tom, do you need me to go back
No,
to
no, no,
the
no.
slide? Okay. So that's just the years that data was collected.
No wonder you couldn't understand the
I
question.
know, yeah.
Sorry.
Not a problem. So what are we doing about this? Go ahead.
No, I'll ask you later.
Sure.
Yep.
How are we working on this work? How are we working on the achievement gap in Simsbury? One of the first things we do is we pull apart this data and we look at it not only in the aggregate, how are groups of students doing, but we even break it down to the individual level. So at our very first professional development as a department this year, we shared this data with our teachers and said, what do you think is going on? How can we get better in what we do, which will result hopefully in better achievement results for our students? Certainly we celebrated what was going well, but we turned this data into very specific professional growth and development goals for our teachers to be able to work on the work, to look at different themes that we have through content, performance, grade, slice and dice in a lot of different ways to get at the teach. One of the ways that certainly Aaron and previous principals in their presentations have shared is the shift to the Math in Focus curriculum. I am really happy to share the collaborative work that has been led through my office and Aaron's office so that special ed and general ed teachers are at the same table learning the pedagogy in deep ways. We are a part of that professional development. Special education teachers are having the interface with the math coaches as well. And we are bringing to the table how disabilities manifest themselves through the curriculum. So if you have a student that has difficulty with language processing, when we're looking at the tasks and how we ask students to demonstrate their learning through Math in Focus, we can provide that level of expertise in sharing how do disabilities look through this curriculum and what do we need to do, what do we need to pay attention to as we're teaching. One of the other great things that we have, we're not just going to be waiting for the next round of SBAC results or SAT. We have the measures of STAR, that performance data. So over time, teachers are looking at kind of doing these little dipstick assessments. How are our kids doing? Are they on track? Do we have to adjust anything in our own instruction and our own specialized instruction for our students with disabilities to have a more favorable outcome regarding achievement? So we're really excited about that work that we're doing collaboratively. And we continue to make movement and efforts to deepen our practices, not only deepen, but broaden our practices in co-teaching. So I have shared with the board in previous presentations what that looked like specifically at the middle school through the leadership of Katie Crisula, who's also here this evening, the high school department supervisor. We're increasing our offerings of co-teaching at the high school as well. And we're seeing some nice favorable results as far as achievement gains for students who are in these environments accessing the gen ed curriculum. Right? So what's really important to know and to be able to recognize is that achievement gap is going to close if students are exposed to grade level standards and curriculum. So we're, again, at that table for that work, and we believe that it's going to make a difference, and we can start seeing the additional kind of trend lines that we want to see relative to our students' performance in special education. Any questions on the achievement gap before we go on to the number 2 of the big 5 of dyslexia? Okay, Nancy.
Great. So one of the other, and thank you for allowing me an opportunity to share some of the work that we're doing, and it's great to be on this journey of the Big 5 with Sue and the team. So one of the teams that we meet as a separate group is a dyslexia group, and that's made up of a number of different people from different groups and different levels. This year we worked on developing some goals moving forward. The board might remember that the state about 3 years ago started really diving into looking at dyslexia as a subcategory of learning disabilities. So we already had a category of learning disabilities, that's an eligibility area on the IEP, but this really honed in on those kids that really meet some specific criteria and needs in the dyslexia area. So as the state was doing that, Sue was already on those pieces, and we continue to work on developing goals of looking at the assessment pieces. How are we finding these students and identifying them? And we have lots of folks in district, the special ed teachers, who have background on using the specific skills that once we've identified these students, then we can use, get into the teach and help these students really make the gains that they need to, you know, in the area of dyslexia. The other piece that's really important is this work doesn't happen without, again, the collaboration with the SRIP group, and that's our Simsbury Reading Intervention program. And those folks are our intervention layers, our Tier 1, our Tier 2, and Tier 3 folks, and they're the ones that are going to help us identify and find those kids early on. And they've been with us every step of the way, from the professional development to sitting at the table looking at these assessments and these screens. So that's been a really a large piece of the pie in this focus for part of the Big Five.
Next, transition. So I know in previous presentations I've shared the differences between the little t transitions, those that happen between grade level or schools, and then the big T transition, which is what Derek is right at the doorstep of right now, right? And what happens after students graduate or age out of special services. So we have a transition task force. It is co-chaired by Deb Service. So Deb, thank you for being here tonight. But the transition task force is made up of different special educators with a variety of backgrounds who have a passion in this work of ensuring that our transitions are as effective and as smooth as possible. So we have a 5-year plan of where we would like to be and what that looks like for students, for parents and guardians and education and understanding, but also our own knowledge and practices as a special education department. So this year we're really focusing on our assessment practices. How do we determine what transition needs might look like for individual students? What formal measures, what informal measures do we use? Along with that, and inherent in our mission statement, is the whole concept of increasing independence. We want all of our students to be able to live independently, successfully, and have that level of achievement that's expected. So we are consistently looking at how we embed independence into our practices. Another focus of transition, really excited to our Special Education Parent-Teacher Council, or SEPTO, has had a rejuvenation over the past 3 years. We're doing some really neat work in the community, and one of these collaborations is with the Chamber of Commerce. So Simsbury is a bike-friendly community. It's also a disability-friendly community. And our students who will be becoming adults or have become adults, how do we work with our businesses to have them recognize the value in our students and our young adults, both as employees, but also as consumers in a Simsbury economy, and what does that look like? So the Chamber is really interested in partnering with us to certainly have these conversations and to talk about best practices relative to that consumer and employee. So we're really excited about that, so you'll be hearing more about that. And then finally, just something I would like to highlight is STEP, Students in Transitional Employment Practices. So I've shared with you before that this is a role that is shared with Bridget Anuli, who is a former school counselor at the middle school, started off as a special educator here many years ago, as well as Ellen Grew, who is really a specialist around students on the autism spectrum. Together, they work to develop opportunities for our high school students to engage in employment placements and practices throughout the Simsbury community. So you heard me chat about before, there's Carter in the lower right, in how his egg rolls were on the menu at Antonio's, right? That's through the STEP program. And here are some other pictures, students working. Dominic loves Neckers, has always cherished Neckers since he was a young boy, and now is there as an employee through this program. So whether it be a placement here at the Board of Education or town offices and local businesses and different aspects of our community, our students are gaining those skills, again, to be potential employees to the greater economy here in Simsbury. So things that we're really excited about that we're working on relative to transition.
So the next part of the Big Five is the mental health component, and certainly we can't get away from hearing about that every day in the news, and so we're on the forefront of helping them identify those kids as soon as possible that need our support. So we continue to do some work around the Ross Green collaborative problem-solving approach, and if the board might remember, that's around his basic premise is that kids will do well if they can from a behavioral standpoint. Just like we have an intervention program for our reading students when we identify that they have reading needs, it's the same concept. What are the lagging skills that some of our kids come to around behavior, and how do we teach into those? Because they do want to do the best they can, and we need to help them do that. So this Ross Green work that our psychs and social workers have been taking on, along as well as our special ed teachers, are kind of helping work with those kids and work with teachers just to take what's naturally coming one step further. So it's something that we're really proud of and been continue to work on. But our behavior coaches, we're really blessed in the district to have folks that work with both special ed and regular ed to help with behaviors in the classroom. And we identify that those folks need to have their buckets filled and professional development given to them as well, and we're trying to identify some areas that we can help expand their knowledge and keep those buckets filled so that they're serving our kids really well, and identify some things there. Our psychs and social workers also have subgroups that they work in as part of both PLCs and smaller committees, and we're working around the areas of school anxiety, which is an issue that we want to help develop strategies and coping techniques for. Mindfulness is a big one at the high school, and certainly that trickles down into the elementary schools with work around zones and just mindfulness techniques coming in from recess. It's great if you've ever seen it in the elementary schools. Executive functioning, remember all those planning tools, all those things are going to help them not only in school, but remember to take care of and pay their taxes and all of those things when they get to be adults. As I said in the beginning, the collaborative problem-solving piece, identifying those kids, wrapping around services, and getting those lagging skills taught too.
I think what we're really trying to focus on is onus, right?
Is what?
Onus of students, onus of their performance, and what I'm really happy about relative to the mental health work. For example, just our recent professional development in November, our school psychs and social workers were presenting to our general education partners on these different aspects, right? What things look like, what are strategies that are tried and true that work with students that demonstrate difficulties, so that, again, that increased partnership in building the capacity of all is going to be the way that we are going to see the results that we want to see.
And the receptiveness of the teachers, that was overwhelming, being part of one of those groups. Just their willingness to say, what more can you give me so I can meet more kids, was fantastic.
So finally, service delivery. How do we provide a lot of different services to our students? Specialized instruction looks like a lot of different things for many different students depending upon what their needs are. And we're proud of that. We're proud of what we provide. So we're always looking at our specialized programs, making sure that students are being educated in what we call their least restrictive environment to the greatest degree possible, as their general education peers would be educated in those environments. And what does that look like? We also want to make sure that whenever we're providing specialized instruction, that the ones that know how to work in that element the best are the ones providing that teach. So that's something that we continuously look at, and again, how do we provide high quality instruction to all of our students, and how do we ensure that our students with disabilities are exposed to content level standards so they can perform at high levels as well. So some additional updates before I go to that. This is kind of more of some of the managerial pieces of special ed that I'm going to delve into in a second, but does anyone have any questions relative to the Big Five and the work that we've been doing?
Yeah, I have two questions. One of them, I don't know if I'm going to get this question straight, so bear with me.
Sure.
In looking at the rankings, we go back to the ranking, in the math rankings in particular. Those are the ones that are disappointing, of course. And I'm just wondering if, I'm going to read my questions to get it right. I'm wondering if the special services DERG ranking in percentage of math goal is the same as the general education student ranking in the DERG list.
As far as placement goes, I would have to kind of compare that to previous presentations. Aaron, I know, I'm looking over at Aaron and she's
We're
kinda
about, I
counting.
think, 10 or 11, so it's a similar ranking.
It's a similar.
Comparable.
Yeah,
So it's-
very
it's-
comparable.
It's not significantly different.
No.
No,
Okay.
it's not, Tom.
Thank you. That's good. Relatively speaking. The other question really is a resource question. And so I have to ask it, and that is, if you all could, that are responsible for the management of this program, could wave a magic wand at budget time and get the resource that you feel you need to make the program to improve this gap in math even more effective, what would that resource request be?
Thank you for the question. And I will respond by first saying that the board has been extremely supportive in my tenure in this position of additional resources, whether they be anywhere from preschool teachers to additional special education teachers to, we added another teacher at the high school. Okay, so I know that that doesn't answer your question specifically through math, but the Board of Ed has been extremely generous in how we allocate resources to special ed. At this point, Tom, we're going to be working along with Aaron, the math coaches, and those resources. So that magic wand really has already happened at this point.
That's what I was going to say.
You know, you will certainly, you know, potentially hear some requests for additional support, potentially in the mental health areas, as we move along and continue in our work. But we feel like our resources are well allocated and well provided.
So the investment in resources that the board has already made is, at this time, looks adequate to the task.
It does.
And just
We're actually having some of those conversations right now in terms of this week meeting with principals and with program directors to start to listen to their rationales for any additional resources or focus areas that they want to talk about. And then Sue will present to the board the first meeting in January on her budget and address those things in more specifics.
Thank you.
Thank you. So some additional updates. Usually I share with you for the past 2 years that we hit all markers for the state report. So that's the state's continuous improvement plan. We had a little ding on us this year. We had a disproportionality concern. Now, one might think, oh my goodness, what's that? The disproportionality came, they said we're over-identifying too many white students with an intellectual disability. So, the resolution to that is I had to do a pretty comprehensive report that shares with the state what our procedures are around child find, around differentiation practices, just to ensure that we had the right measures in place. It's nothing that the board should be concerned about, but certainly I wanted to let you know that, that we were seemingly over-identifying based upon the overall population. The second, is what I wanted to share with the board, in case you heard about this, is Medicaid. So through the new state budget is a requirement for districts to now engage in Medicaid billing. That's not something that Simsbury had done in the past. I'm working very closely with Burke in the business office, and we had gotten kind of a wind that this might be a requirement. So as is typical, we like to get ahead of the game. And we had reached out to some different providers that assist districts with this Medicaid billing. So we've already started that process just to kind of sign up with the state and what does that look like. But I will be sharing more about that in the coming months. We're looking at late winter or an early spring start. But in case the board kind of heard wind of this, I certainly wanted you to have that information from me.
That adds a lot of administrative
hours.
It does. We are just at the infancy of understanding what that will mean. We've offered to some of the members of my department that might be impacted, whether that be counselors, board-certified behavior analysts, people that could certainly bill hours to Medicaid, to come and hear some initial presentations. But one of the reasons why we've done this reach out is to ascertain, which agencies help districts best with this to minimize that impact, Todd. So as I shared with you at the beginning, I wanted to end with our mission statement, right, with that student in the center. And I was thinking about, you know, when I think about our students, all of these faces flash in front of me. And one of those faces was Derek Regenauer. So at this point, I'm going to invite Derek to come on up. Nancy's going to switch out with Derek. And again, Derek has been with us since age 3, and he's turning 21 in the spring. So when we talk about our mission statement of families, and Derek's mom, Karen, is here this evening, of families, of community, of faculty and staff coming together for students to achieve, be independent, and really pursue their passions and potential. It's all about what Derek has to share with us tonight. So I'm going to hand him the clicker and let him do his thing.
Hi, I'm Derek Regenauer.
It's okay.
Hi.
Pick up the sound.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Derek Regenauer. I've been a student in Simsbury since preschool, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about myself. These are some thoughts about my educational experiences in Simsbury. I liked Best Buddies a lot. My junior year at the high school was my favorite year. Sometimes school could be hard. I felt like I was able to get help from teachers and staff when I needed it. I feel Simsbury schools did a good job preparing me. I feel pretty confident now about myself and what I am able to do. This is what I have accomplished. That is me with Kate Alex.
Yeah.
I am a police cadet in Simsbury, and my title is Chief.
Ooh.
I'm a student at FETA. I have participated in job internships at Connecticut Children's Medical Center, Unified Theater, Food Share, and Theater Works. Over 500 volunteer hours.
We worked hard, huh? The past couple of years.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I was Employee of the Month at FETA for September 2017.
Why was that a big deal? I was there that day. I didn't know that you were getting that award that day, but why is that a big deal?
That's a big deal because that means, like, you did the best job for that specific month.
Hmm?
I have a paid job at Airmark, University of Hartford Dining Services.
So you're getting paid to do. It's not just the volunteer hours, right?
Right.
So those paid jobs are hard to come by. And so that speaks a lot for Derek and his skill set and his tenacity, how tough you are and reliable you are, right?
Right. I am a Special Olympics assistant coach.
Wow.
What sport?
Bowling.
Great.
I have my driver's license.
Bravo. Good.
Right.
Awesome.
That's great.
You gave me the warning too before you.
For education, I will continue my learning in education by learning on the job and by possibly taking a community college or training class. For employment, I would like to work in law enforcement in some capacity or work helping children with disabilities. For independent living, I like to live on my own at some point.
How do you feel about that, Mom? Not yet. So, I honestly, I just asked Derek if he would come and share some thoughts with you as board members, and he came up with all of that on his own, and I think it speaks to Derek's growth. We figured it out before the board presentation. How many years have I known you?
You've known me
What
for...
did we say? 9 years?
Yeah, 9 years.
9 years. So Derek was a student at the middle school, and I look at him now, and I'm in awe of the growth and what an awesome, not that I had any question that you were going to be an awesome young man and a contributor, but he's really making it happen. And he's a great example of our mission statement, Alive and Well in Simsbury.
You bet.
So we rock it.
Hey.
You're a rock star, you know that.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Welcome.
Great job.
Really appreciate it.
Hey, should we invite him to graduation at FBTA?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to come and
That'd be
experience
great.
it, and Derek will, as all the students do, share their personal statements at graduation day, so it's a really moving ceremony and another
Wonderful.
great way to show our work alive and well. So, thanks for being incredible. Thanks for coming out.
Good job.
Thank you so much for coming.
Hey.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank
But
you, Derek.
any questions for me?
I just have one question for Derek.
Oh, he's got
One of the things I loved about the presentation, I loved everything in it, all the activities, but that paid job at the University of Hartford, to me, that seems like a really big deal, that you've made that transition into a paying job. How did that job come about? How did you get that job, Derek?
The way I got that job is I had to fill out an application through Airmark, which then was subsequently submitted to Airmark, and then it's like an automatic approval thing. They just took it over and then they approve you for the job.
So, dining services is one of the many internships that are provided and job placements that are provided through FBTA. And certainly we are very excited that FBTA is on the University of Hartford campus. Derek isn't giving himself enough credit though, because it wasn't just about filling out an application, right? He had to speak with people about that position. They don't give those positions lightly because they want someone that's going to be reliable and show up every day and have a strong work ethic and be able to work with people and collaborate. And those are all skills that Derek has really strengthened through his hard work and determination. And Mom has been an incredible advocate for him, both Mom and Dad. And it's just been a pleasure watching you become such a fine young man.
Thank you. It's a wonderful story.
Any other questions for Derek or for me?
Thank you very much. That was a lot of great information. We really appreciate this.
Sue, I would just say I really appreciate your team coming out, and want to compliment you and your team on coming together. I really appreciate how you present the strategic plan in the focus areas and that continuous loop we come back to. And I know a big piece of that is your crew over here and your ability to listen to them and really have honest dialogue about change and shifts in our practices. So
Would you
thank you
introduce
for
your
all
team,
your
please?
efforts.
Absolutely. So Christine Golden, who is doing some wonderful work as a school social worker, but she is also the department supervisor for our related services staff. Occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech and language pathologists. Leah Coe, who is our preschool supervisor. So last year, a big focus of the presentation was around the complexities of birth to 3. And Leah leads that work and does an amazing job at it. She also has a background in gifted and talented. So she is a wealth of knowledge, information, support. Katie Krasula, who's in her 2nd year with us at the high school. Her background is in speech and language pathology, but she is leading the great work at the high school. Certainly some of what I talked about the co-teaching, those SAT results, which is fabulous. Next to her is no stranger to the board, Matt Spector, who was the Chamber of Commerce Educator of the Year, and in Matt Spector form, heard that Derek was a part of the presentation and wanted to come out and support him.
Nice.
And certainly, last but not least, Deb Service, inclusion specialist extraordinaire. She was also recognized as the Tom DiCarletto Award winner for her outstanding practices for students with disabilities. She is just an amazing member of the team. Her passion is palpable, and she brings her wisdom to the work every single day. And certainly Nancy Forsberg, who's in year 2 in that role as district supervisor, who oversees all things elementary. And these people together, we partner well, we throw things out there, we throw the issues out there, we problem solve, and it's always in the best interest of the students. We try to keep them at the center of the table in every single discussion.
Great.
Thank you so very much. Thank you all very much for coming, and thanks for doing all the hard work.
Thank you.
Bye, Derek.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll grab it.
Clicker. That was great. Thank you, Neil.
Yeah. So I thought I was following Sue with my enrollment projections. It turns out I'm after Derek, so.
Oh, sorry.
I will.
Very sorry.
I'll just go quickly and get out of the way here. As you know, our October 1st reporting on enrollment is one of the key markers that we use to kind of talk about how we did the previous year. That data then gets turned around to our demographers at NESDEC, and about this time of year each year we get our enrollment projections, which really I always talk about why it's important at this time of year, because it's really the first important budget document that comes in. It's really where we start looking at how many kids in each grade and how we have to plan for that. So just a few notes before we look at some of the data. The largest cohorts, obviously the board members who have been here for a while know that the larger cohorts are aging their way through. So that slide talks about the largest ones are in the high school. I actually would say 8th grade is kind of the last of the larger classes. So we've got about 5 more years for the larger cohorts to work their way through. Simsbury's population, like that of the state of Connecticut, is becoming older, and we do have more homes in town that with no school-age children in them anymore, and that's an important part of what they use to figure their assumptions. However, our net move-ins are pretty strong. We are still attracting move-ins to Simsbury. A lot of that is based on new construction that we've talked about. So we have now given NESDEC some pretty good data about all those new projects that have developed in town over the past couple of years and are still coming. And we'll be keeping a really close eye on what happens at the Hartford property, which is scheduled to be about 290 units if it all comes through. And while we will show you 5 years out, really their advice is to pay closest attention to the projections within 3 years. So the first data slide is kind of where we've been. So this is kind of 5 years back. And you can see that in 2013, we were at 4,330 students. And now this past October 1st, 4,039. You can see a decline of about 300 students in the school district. Just about a third of that at the elementary level, a little less at the middle school because it's only 2 grades, and a little more at the high school. So that's the picture of where we've been. And then this is what came back from NESDEC in terms of for next year in particular, we will be if the projection is accurate, it'll be the first time in a long time that we're under 4,000 students. They're projecting us at 3,996. That's a K-12 number. It does not include preschool. None of these include preschool. And when you go 5 years out, you see that 3,878. The report that I get from NESDEC actually goes 10 years out. We don't share all of that. That 3,878 actually is the lowest point. It starts to go back up if they're and that corresponds with that 8th grade class that I'm talking about that will have worked its way through the school system. So these slides just take a look at each level at 1 year out and then 5 years out. So at the upper left-hand corner, full school district, K-12, next year's decrease is 43 students, and it's a total of 161 over the next several years. At the elementary, you can see that enrollment is projected not to change at all, a decrease of 2 students from this year to next year. how are we using that data? Well, we then roll forward what the elementary class sizes look like, and I can tell you we've already done that with our principals who are in budgeting, and we had 96 elementary classes in the school district this past year, and we're projecting 96 for next year. So that's going to stay exactly the same. We won't gain any enrollment-driven reductions out of that. It'll be the same. At Henry James, you can see down 44 students for next year, a larger 8th to 9th grade going out than a 6th to 7th grade coming in. I want to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. You might feel we could yield some enrollment-driven savings there, but there's a little trick to what's coming a year after that we need to take a look at. And then at the high school, no decrease for next year, an increase of 3 students, but you'll see that over time, that's where we're going to start to 193 students over the next several years. And that will start to show where you need fewer English teachers, fewer math teachers. With that numbers of teachers, you will yield some savings. So at Henry James, what I want you to look at, we're 658 this year on October 1st at 2017, projected for 614 for next year. So on that, we probably could approach the budget and say, well, could we reduce a little bit in each department given that lower number of students? But the trick is to look out to 2019 where it's the current 5th grade class and they're a little larger. So you're going to be right back to 644. So anything you cut this year, you'd likely be adding back for. So it's really sort of beyond that year that I would say you can yield a little bit of savings at Henry James. With the way staffing works, you don't want to be shaving a section or two only to have to put it back the next year. Not a good way to staff your buildings. At the high school, again, almost, actually a slight increase projected for next year. But then you can see some pretty significant declines coming in the years after that as we go from 1408 projected for this next year to pretty quickly to 1342 and then to 1273. And those will be some budgeting years that will really take a hard look at our high school staffing to see what savings we might yield. This is how much of this all gets figured out. This is a little bit of a confusing chart. It makes sense to me because I work with this all the time. That what you're looking at is the chart on the bottom is kind of babies that were born in Simsbury in years and then the top line corresponds to what that yields for kindergarten 5 years later. So you're looking at 2 sort of dates simultaneously here, and what you can see is if you average the past 4 years, every 100 births that happened 5 years earlier, you got 137 kindergartners. But in this year's cohort, for 100 births that happened 5 years ago, you got 157 kindergartners. That's strong in-migration between the time of birth year and kindergarten start. And what you're watching is how far apart those lines are. So you should be able to see on the right-hand side that the distance between the 2 lines is actually a little larger than it was back at the beginning of that. So I follow this really closely and enjoy it. That's the explanation. Trust me, it works. And then just to conclude with what some of the key findings is that we are looking at about 32 students less per year for 5 years coming up. That 3878, as I spoke about, is going to be we project that to be the low point, and then it will slowly increase back up toward 4,000 over the out years from there. Again, the current economy and real estate situations are actually pretty good. With the new construction that's going on, we are going to track this really closely. You saw the documents that I've now worked on with our enrollment coordinator, Sue Kakamo, and been in contact with the builders of the new projects. We're truly on up-to-date information of how many children those new developments are yielding, and we're going to continue to keep track of that every 6 months. And then also, many of you saw this data already when we shared some of it at facilities and enrollment. We met just a few weeks ago, and as the board knows from our tri-board meeting and from that meeting, we do have a look a little bit at a possibility now that Henry James has lessened population enough that we could look at a 6th to 8th grade configuration. That's a much more long-term conversation that I know will be part of your capital discussion. So that's your NESDEC report. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Neil, just out of curiosity, on the 10-year, I know that it's much less accurate. Do any of those K cohorts get up to 300 again?
No, they are pretty much at like high 270s, 280s. That's what they're looking at.
I have a question.
Sure.
So with the present building that we have and how many units that we have, and I think that we're geared to maybe be toward 1,000, how many students have enrolled in Simsbury Public Schools with the present building lot so far over the past several years?
From all of the new developments, and
Right.
this is inclusive of Carson Way, Highcroft Place, Mill Commons, Dorset Crossing, Kings Ridge, and Aspen Green. Total is 30, 41, 52, 57 students have come out of those new developments so far, with a lot more units still to be occupied.
Right.
Neil has a great document on that he can get you, that you missed at one of the meetings you weren't here.
Probably.
But he should share that with you because you'd find it interesting.
Neil, you seem to suggest that there's sort of an upside down bell curve going on, right? And due to the construction, and the enrollment does creep back up. Are you suggesting though that creep will still not get us to sort of present day levels?
No, you're graduating classes out of the high school that are about 360. A small one right now at the high school would be 330, and we're not looking at cohorts that ever get back kind of to that level. So much close to 300 is the most that you're gonna see.
But the bend you'd see for any impact would be when that those cohorts do start to grow a little bit, because you had some Ks of 225, 230
Mhm.
that may be projected to get back up to 270, 280.
No more 400. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's Connecticut.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Moving on to my friend, Mr. Leclerc.
Oh, that's me. You get to listen to me for a few minutes.
Oh, Matt, excellent. Please share.
All right. I will make it quick. Yes,
You want
I'll
it?
take that.
Here, pass that to him.
That'll be good entertainment. Me
You're
try to
never
flick
gonna
my
be
own
up
slide.
there.
All right. What I wanted to do tonight, and it is only just a few slides, it's like 5 or 6 slides, is just provide a bit of a high-level look and some context to where we're going with the budget. Because when we come back after the holiday break from school, our first meeting in January, as we said, Sue will present her special education budget, and then we will have a presentation at a series of board meetings. One thing that our team was talking about, and I think that's important, I don't think we ever felt like we got out from under the budget last year at the board table. We are going to try very hard not to make it all about budget all the time. It's important. We want to separate our presentation so we have that continuum, but we also have a lot of other exciting work we need to talk about and present to the board as well.
good.
So I just wanted to mention that in our planning. We've had quite a bit of conversation and dialogue about that.
Thank you.
We met, as I mentioned, yesterday and today with principals. The majority of the day, our team will get together tomorrow, our central office team, and really start to synthesize the information that we have there and kind of set our trajectory as we work through the budget process. So all that is going on now and has been going pretty well. All right, I was able to do that. All right, so some basic data. One of the things we always talk about and share with the Board of Finance certainly monitors these numbers, are the per pupil expenditure number. This is lag data. It's a year-old data when we do get it. But as we frame our work moving forward, I wanted to share that information with you. You can see our per pupil expenditure went up about $600. It's largely an enrollment-driven statistic. So in districts that have seen significant declines in enrollment, you see more of an increase in the per pupil expenditure. Not too drastic of a movement in our state ranking or in our DIRG ranking. You can see in that Hartford area, we did shift towards the upper end by a few. I'm not absolutely sure what those districts are, but we'll take a closer look at that. But that's important data to know where we are. Another factor, and I was mentioning, I think this to Tom, you conversationally last week, a lot goes into this number. That's not just your operating budget divided by the number of kids. I think not that it's a misleading number, it's an audited number. But one of the things that does go into this number is any capital dollars that are paid for in cash. All right, so in the audited number, we made the prudent decision, the Board of Finance made the prudent decision to do the turf replacement field, which had to be done quickly, and pay for it in cash. That's reflected in that number. So it's just important to know that it's not as simple as, okay, enrollment goes down, you divide it by your whole budget, how come that number's not decreasing?
I think I mentioned this when you showed this last year, but it still strikes me as the value you're getting, the town is getting is tremendous. I just wanted to put that out.
Value for an average.
Yeah. For the scores and the students that we are cranking out in this town, and to be ranked 96. I can't read. I'm sorry.
93rd. I think 169.
93rd. That's fantastic. That speaks volumes.
So it's
I think,
an important number
here.
to monitor and benchmark and absolutely pay attention to as we continue to work through.
Matt, just a question on that, just to hitchhike on what Jeff said. This is very impressive information, and I wish it was more widely known in the community. But just a question for clarification, for public discussion maybe. What is it about our district that allows us to be so efficient by comparison to many, many other districts? How are we getting this done from an efficiency standpoint?
I think a lot of it has to do with the structure of how we operationalize, Tom. I think, working within a continuous improvement model with goals and priorities and making sure that we check ourselves against those priorities and continue to push ourselves to find ways to be more efficient are key to being successful. I mean, if you go and you look at the recent budget increases, which are down below on that slide, and you recognize that through the collaborative work of our boards and the other boards, in 3 of the last 4 years, you've had a flat mill rate. We've been able to reallocate and move forward some important initiatives in the district and feel good about where we are. But we work in a model and we stay true to that model.
So there's nothing in our cost structure that would explain our efficiency, or is there something in our cost structure? In other words, are our salaries lower compared to some of the other districts? Are our operating expenses lower?
I mean, from a comparable standpoint, I think there's different areas of strength and other areas where we've put priorities that we have more spending. Teacher salaries in general, which are a significant driver in our budget, were certainly not at the high end of comparable teacher salaries. I know that in our negotiations last year, it's something that we wanted to do some creative thinking within the range of the going rate, so to speak, to try to move some dollars towards the upper end of the salaries. But I mean, that would be one area where a lot of the dollars sit comparatively. We're, in strongly suited.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think it's important to take a look at where we were as we launched last year. So in the superintendent's budget that I presented to you last year, it was a 2.48% increase. We had some things in that budget that we weren't able to actualize as a result of what happened with the state of Connecticut. We're not going to revisit all that tonight, but it certainly was a process that we spent a lot of time at the board table working through. We reduced our budget by $1 million, 12.5 full-time equivalent positions, and a 0.99 increase, which was the lowest increase on record, I think, Burke, that we have in our, going back at least. Neil just talked about the enrollment, so a decrease of 43 students, but 2 of those levels pretty stable, right? Elementary level, high school level. So we're not going to find significant efficiencies in our staffing of classroom teachers. We're having conversations of benchmarking other areas and looking at things, so we will have some enrollment-related ideas to share with you, as well as some restructural ideas as we get into the budget process to try to achieve savings. But it's not a year where we can say, I can easily say we're going to capitalize on 5 or 6 classroom teaching positions due to enrollment. We're not in that position this year, and that's important to know as we start out.
Just another comment on that. At a previous meeting, as I recall, the question was raised as to whether or not, and I think Mike Goldman also had a comment about this, is there a possibility that because we have invested so effectively in technology in the classroom, that we could increase our class sizes to possibly gain some efficiency, simply on the assumption that we can teach larger classes equally effectively because we have more technology input to the teaching and learning process?
I mean, there may be areas...
We haven't reviewed that. The class size thing, my understanding is we haven't reviewed it for a long time.
Correct. Correct. There may be some selected areas, some selected courses that would fit that model, but overall, Tom, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that because of the use of technology with all the changes in standards, all the expectations, other challenges that we're dealing with, that we're in a place where we would be able to present that scenario to you now.
Understand.
We had the 3-board meeting. We had good attendance there, and I wanted to frame that out. The Board of Finance provided an expenditure cap, essentially, of a 1.75%, so that's important to think about in our planning. Other factors, the woes of the state of Connecticut certainly aren't behind us. I mean, I think we made out in the short term in a much more beneficial way than we thought we would, potentially for current year, and at least for the dollars they're talking about next year. But there could be some unanticipated things that move forward, certainly as the year evolves. The grand list growth looks to be healthy this year, up 1.5 to 2%, so that's a positive. And the Board of Finance talked about the town reserve levels. Their policy with the town reserve levels, the realization that they're in a healthy position now, largely due to the contingency planning that took place, and we did not have to, use those dollars in that contingency planning because of the educational cost share money. So certainly use of some level of reserves, along with what we come forward as a budget and the Board of Selectmen, will all work into that equation again. But I think the math behind it on that mill rate worksheet was that 1.75% would yield a flat mill rate, which I know is an important goal for many community members and certainly the Board of Finance. Health insurance, I'm going to give a little bit more airtime here on the next slide after this, but wanted to show you just fixed costs as we move forward to kind of set in your mind where we are. It's a format we're familiar with. The first 4 line items are all contractual salary line items, fixed costs moving forward. The health insurance line item is our second largest driver. You see a significant cost increase there of $700,000. So overall, rolling our organization forward at the same size, before we talk about any efficiencies, we're a little over 3% in fixed cost. We do have 6 known retirements at this time, where we figure in a certain level of savings. So you can see we're at about that 3% as we start our planning process with a cap of 1.75. So a lot of work to do, but I wanted to put those numbers out in front of the board tonight so they had an understanding of where we are and where we need to go. Health insurance. For those of you that were at the meeting, you heard my comments to the Board of Finance that I would ask that we have a conversation about our internal service fund, which is how we fund our insurance operation. We've used that self-insurance fund for many years strategically to mitigate the increases in insurance. The Board of Finance, you can see the bullet several years ago, we had a very healthy reserve level. Took $3 million from that to invest in our OPEB, which is other post-retirement investment fund. Shore that fund up, which is at a very healthy level. And we've definitely received some benefits from that. I don't want to say that was a negative move at all. On an annual basis, we received some benefits. But some of that movement, in conjunction with some catastrophic claims that were up incredibly last year, and where we are with our potential rate increases this year, our reserve level isn't healthy enough to really offset the way we traditionally have, or really offset too much at all, which is why you see such a large line item there. So my request, and they're very open to the conversation, I think it'll take place at a Board of Finance meeting in December, is to look at a potential payment either back from the OPEB fund, which is about 80% funded, into self-insurance, or maybe some other conversation about reserve levels into our internal service fund. So essentially, to wrap that up for you, if we can accomplish that, what that would allow us to do is mitigate a little bit the size of that increase that you saw there of $700,000 in insurance. I would be hopeful that we can come to you in our budget planning with a number that doesn't stand out that much. Last year, the number was $1 million. This year, 700,000. In past years, it would be somewhere between, I mean, some years it was nothing because we were so favorable, but, you know, 250,000, 300,000. Something that would provide us a little more flexibility, as we know we got to move from 3 to 175.
Just a question for us relatively
Sure.
newer board members. Is it correct that these are reserves, just like the town has a reserve in total? Are these reserves for they're basically contingency reserves that we can draw on? We can take money out of these contingency reserves if we don't think we're going to need them and use that money to fund other things. Is that what it's
Which
meant by
reserves, are you referring to the town reserves?
No, in this case, I'm referring to these two reserves.
So the internal service fund there, that reserve is actually how we pay the claims. That is how we run our
Yes.
insurance operations. So we do not dip into that for anything other than insurance.
I see.
All right, it's strictly how you pay the claims.
Mm-hmm.
All right, rather than having an insurance operation do that for you, you manage that yourself. And with a healthy fund balance, you can mitigate the spikes, the up and down spikes that can take place, and plan more thoughtfully. And we've been able to do that for a long time. It's a benefit to the town. Upstairs, downstairs has it. It's a great choice. We've just gotten to a point from a combination of things that we don't have as much flexibility in smoothing that curve.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So just next steps, as I mentioned, January 9th, we come back and we kind of kick off and we start presentations. You can see the other ones we have lined up for you. Certainly enrollment and staffing will be a significant part of the conversation. We always pull together a workshop where we go over, I don't want to call them smaller line items, but you know, your technology, equipment, and give you an idea what those things look like over time. Our budget will be, my budget will be presented to you on February 13th, and then you will have to vote to adopt a budget on February 27th.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay. Any questions on that? I know it was a lot in a short period of time, but I wanted to get this out here. We'll post this on our website so those kind of high-level things are out and accessible for people to look at.
It's good to have a way to start. Any other questions? Anybody have any thoughts? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Moving on to our next item is the review of the Board of Ed committee assignments. I think I've talked to all of you. We don't have to make any motions. It was just to make everyone aware that they've been reassigned. They've been assigned for another season of subcommittees. As anyone might want to know, we have Policy Subcommittee, Personnel and Negotiation Subcommittee, Curriculum Subcommittee, and Communications Subcommittee. So we had to coordinate seats for our new member, Jen Bachelor, as Tom Doran left. And this is where we have it. If anyone has any questions, by all means, let me know, and we can work along with that. So thank you very much with that. It's our last meeting before the holidays. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. And looking forward to a fabulous and positive new year. Anyone have any other public audience questions or thoughts? All right, seeing none, our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 9th, 2018. And I would take a motion. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Yep.
I did that one just fine.